Ibrahim Traoré was sprayed at a luxury dealership in Los Angeles. Then everything changed. The gleaming showroom of a luxury car dealership in Los Angeles buzzed with tension, the air thick with unspoken disdain. Richard, a tall manager with slicked-back silver hair, his tailored navy suit crisp and his sharp gaze dripping with arrogance, stood over a man in a black hoodie, his voice laced with venom. "You don't belong here," Richard snapped, gesturing at the man's faded jeans and scuffed sneakers, his polished shoes tapping impatiently on the marble floor. The man with deep brown skin looked up, his dark eyes calm but piercing, a faint West African accent threading through his words. "Respect doesn't cost a thing, but it's rarer than any car here," he said, his tone steady. A young employee, Luke, with light brown skin and curly black hair, dressed in a green staff uniform, stood frozen in the corner, his eyes wide with indignation as he recorded the scene on his phone. The showroom fell silent, but who was this man and what storm had just begun? Before diving deeper into this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know where you're listening from, and if stories like these touch your heart, please share your thoughts in the comment section and consider subscribing to my channel. The tension builds in the middle of the story, leading to an unforgettable ending, so don't miss a moment. Tomorrow I have another special story waiting just for you. The sun was just beginning to rise over Los Angeles, casting a golden glow across the city's sprawling streets, the blue sky stretching like an invitation for something extraordinary. Ibrahim Traoré walked through the bustling downtown, his deep brown skin catching the morning light, his black hoodie and faded jeans blending seamlessly with the crowd. His scuffed sneakers tread softly on the pavement, a small gray backpack slung over one shoulder, his dark eyes calm but watchful, a faint West African accent softening his quiet greetings. To the passers-by, he was just another traveler. But this man was no ordinary visitor. He was the president of Burkina Faso, a leader who chose humility over pomp, blending in with the people he served, even on a trip far from home. Ibrahim had arrived in Los Angeles to attend an international summit on sustainable development in Africa, a gathering of leaders and activists advocating for a brighter future. The summit had been a success, with Ibrahim speaking passionately about Burkina Faso's fight for sovereignty over its resources, his words resonating with delegates from across the globe. But now, with the meetings behind him, he had a personal mission, a rare car, a vintage model he'd been searching for months, one he hoped to restore and auction for charity to support Burkina Faso's youth. He'd heard of a luxury dealership in Los Angeles, renowned for its exclusive collection of luxury cars, and decided to visit, keeping his identity hidden to experience the city as an ordinary man. As he walked, Ibrahim soaked in the sights of Los Angeles, the palm trees lining the boulevards, the hum of traffic, the chatter of street vendors. He stopped at a small cafe he'd read about online, a cozy spot tucked between towering glass buildings. "Good morning, Oliver," he said warmly to the barista, a young man with freckled skin and a bright smile, who greeted him like an old friend. "The usual, please," Ibrahim added, ordering a black coffee, his faint West African accent threading through his words. Oliver nodded, oblivious to the fact that he was serving a head of state, and Ibrahim took his coffee with a grateful smile, his thoughts drifting to the car he hoped to find. The luxury car dealership loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun, a beacon of wealth and exclusivity in the heart of Los Angeles. Ibrahim stepped through the doors, the cool air hitting him as the scent of new leather filled his senses, the marble floor gleaming under his scuffed sneakers. The showroom was a temple of extravagance. Cars with flawless finishes lined the space, their curved lines glinting under soft lights, the plush carpeting muffling every step. Well-dressed employees moved through the room, attending to clients in expensive suits and glittering accessories, their voices a low hum of privilege. Ibrahim, in his black hoodie and faded jeans, was nearly invisible, save for a few curious glances and hushed whispers that followed him like a shadow. He ignored the murmurs, his dark eyes scanning the showroom until they landed on a car at the back. A rare vintage Ferrari Monza SP2, its immaculate paintwork and classic design radiating an aura of history. It was exactly what he'd been searching for, a piece of art he could transform into a symbol of hope for Burkina Faso's youth. Resolute, Ibrahim approached a salesman, a young man distracted by his phone, and asked politely, "Excuse me, could you tell me more about this model?" The salesman glanced up, his eyes flicking over Ibrahim's hoodie and jeans, and muttered, "Hang on, I'll get someone," before walking away without a second look. Ibrahim watched him go, his expression calm, but a slight furrow in his brow hinted at the discomfort stirring within him. The whispers grew louder, employees exchanging looks as they murmured, "Does he even know where he is?" And, "He doesn't look like he's buying anything here." Ibrahim heard them but pretended not to, rubbing his chin to mask his unease, his dark eyes fixed on the car. He waited, his patience a quiet strength, until he noticed someone approaching. A man with a stiff posture and an appraising gaze, his tailored navy suit a stark contrast to Ibrahim's hoodie. This was Richard Voss, the manager, and as he stopped in front of Ibrahim, the air seemed to thicken, the weight of judgment in his sharp gaze setting the stage for a confrontation that had already erupted into something unforgettable. Richard's sharp gaze burned with irritation as he adjusted his cufflinks, his polished shoes tapping impatiently on the marble floor. "You're still here," he said, his voice loud enough for the showroom to hear, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I thought I told you to stop wasting my time. This isn't a museum. You can't afford to even touch that car." The insult was blatant, a quiet dagger aimed at Ibrahim's dignity, and the showroom buzzed with tension, customers shifting uncomfortably, their whispers growing louder. A woman in a velvet jacket muttered to her companion, "That's not right," while a man in a pinstripe suit lowered his newspaper, his brow furrowed, but no one dared to speak up. Not yet. Ibrahim looked up, his dark eyes locking onto Richard's, his voice low but steady, his West African accent threading through his words. "I'm here to buy a car," he said, his tone calm but heavy with authority. "But if you're more interested in judging me than doing your job, that's your loss." Richard's laugh was sharp, cutting through the hum of the showroom, his polished shoes tapping as he stepped closer, invading Ibrahim's space. "My loss," he said, his tone laced with venom. "You're the one who's lost, buddy. This place is for people who can pay, people who matter, and honestly, you don't look like you have either." The words were a final blow, and the showroom fell silent, the tension thick enough to choke on, as customers and employees held their breath, waiting for Ibrahim's response. Ibrahim didn't flinch, his dark eyes steady, his expression calm but unyielding, a quiet strength radiating from him like a storm about to break. He tilted his head slightly, as if measuring Richard's words, and said simply, "You'll see soon enough." The cryptic response sent a chill through the room, Richard's smirk faltering for a moment, his sharp gaze flickering with unease. Luke, still clutching his phone, felt his heart race, his light brown skin prickling with anticipation as he whispered to himself, "This isn't over." The showroom remained a powder keg, the tension crackling like static, as Ibrahim turned back to the car, his dark eyes tracing its lines, his calm a quiet promise of a reckoning that was drawing closer with every passing second. The luxury car dealership in Los Angeles stood frozen under the morning light, its glass walls reflecting the city's skyline, but inside the air was heavy with unspoken tension. Ibrahim Traoré stood by the vintage Ferrari Monza SP2, his deep brown skin catching the amber glow of the showroom lights, his black hoodie and faded jeans a quiet defiance against the opulence around him. His scuffed sneakers rested lightly on the marble floor, his dark eyes tracing the car's curves, but the sting of Richard's words, "You don't belong here," echoed in the air like a bitter taunt. Richard, the manager, stood a few paces away, his tall frame rigid in a tailored navy suit, his slicked back silver hair glinting, his sharp gaze burning with irritation as he adjusted his cufflinks. The confrontation had left him shaken, but his arrogance was far from tamed, and the storm was about to grow fiercer. Ibrahim's mind churned like a quiet storm, his thoughts drifting to the purpose that had brought him here. He'd come to Los Angeles for an international summit on sustainable development, a platform to advocate for Burkina Faso's future. But now, with the meetings behind him, he sought something more personal, a rare car to restore and auction for charity, a symbol of hope for the youth of his nation. He'd chosen to travel without fanfare, his black hoodie and faded jeans a deliberate choice to blend in, to experience the world as his people did. But Richard's hostility had struck a nerve, not because it wounded him, but because it reflected the same prejudice he'd fought against his whole life. The kind that judged a man by his skin, his clothes, his perceived worth, rather than his character. Ibrahim's dark eyes narrowed, his West African accent soft but resolute as he murmured to himself, "They'll learn soon enough." Richard, still reeling from Ibrahim's calm defiance, turned to a nearby employee, his voice low but venomous. "Who does he think he is talking to me like that?" he snapped, his polished shoes tapping impatiently as he adjusted his cufflinks, his sharp gaze flicking back to Ibrahim. The employee, a young woman with sleek black hair and a nervous smile, shrugged, her voice a whisper. "He doesn't look like he belongs here, but..." He didn't back down. Richard's laugh was cold, cutting through the hum of the showroom, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Belongs here?" he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "He's lucky to even be in this city. Probably spent his last dime to get through the door. Pathetic." The words carried like a slap, and a few customers turned their heads, their whispers rising like a wave, their eyes darting between Richard and the man in the black hoodie. Luke, the young employee with light brown skin and curly black hair, dressed in a green staff uniform, stood near the entrance, his hands trembling as he clutched his phone. The video he'd recorded still fresh in his memory. He'd captured everything. Richard's taunts, the spray of cleaning fluid, Ibrahim's steady response, and the injustice of it burned in his chest. Luke's light brown eyes flicked to Ibrahim, who stood unmoved by the car, his dark gaze tracing its details, his calmness a stark contrast to the storm brewing around him. Luke whispered to a co-worker, his voice barely audible, "That man, there's something about him. Richard's making a big mistake. Now we're free." The co-worker, a man with a gray suit and a nervous frown, nodded, muttering, "I've got a bad feeling about this." Ibrahim's fingers brushed the edge of the Ferrari's hood one last time, his dark eyes narrowing as he turned away, walking slowly toward a side table lined with brochures and espresso cups. No one had offered him one. No one had asked if he needed help. The showroom's culture was clear. It was a place for the elite, a haven of luxury cars where appearances dictated worth. But Ibrahim wasn't here for their approval. He reached into his hoodie pocket, retrieving a slim black phone, matte finished with no logo, only a fingerprint sensor on the back, a device built for encrypted access and internal commands, a direct line to the engine room of his influence. He tapped the glass screen, the device coming to life without a sound, and entered a 6-digit code. A hidden interface unlocked. Global Oversight Protocol, Stage 1. Below it, a single word. Activate. Ibrahim paused, his dark eyes scanning the showroom, landing on Richard, who was now back in his glass-walled office, sipping from a bone-white espresso cup, utterly unaware. Ibrahim tapped, "Yes," a quiet beep signaling the command had been sent. The gears behind the velvet curtain were now turning. Somewhere across the globe, a secure review hub linked to international oversight organizations flagged Voss Automotive Lounge for a live audit. Facial recognition pinged the showroom's security system, pulling every camera feed, every audio snippet, every staff interaction from the last 48 hours into a digital vault. Ibrahim tucked the phone away, his West African accent barely a whisper as he murmured, "Let's see how they handle this." He turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, arms folded, watching as 3 matte black SUVs glided to a stop outside the building. Sleek, silent, and government-grade in demeanor, the kind of vehicles you didn't see parked, you saw deployed. Inside the lounge, a ripple of unease spread like a cold draft. Conversation stalled mid-sentence. One client actually lowered his espresso cup, staring out the window. Richard stepped out of his office, his sharp gaze narrowing as he approached the glass, his tailored navy suit suddenly feeling too tight. Then he turned pale. The SUV's doors opened in sequence, and out stepped 4 individuals in dark suits, followed by a woman with a steel-gray ponytail and a leather tablet pressed to her chest. No name tags, no smiles, just a quiet purpose. In the center of them all was Harvey Lair, a global director of oversight for international business ethics, a name whispered in boardrooms and feared in corporate corridors. If Harvey showed up in person, it meant one thing: Someone's career was over. Ibrahim turned slowly, stepping back into the heart of the showroom, his black hoodie and faded jeans a stark contrast to the polished surroundings. He let the moment breathe, his dark eyes steady, his West African accent soft but firm as he spoke to no one in particular. Now we'll see what true luxury looks like. The showroom remained silent, the tension crackling like static, as Harvey's gaze locked onto Ibrahim, a nod of recognition passing between them. Richard's face drained of color, his sharp gaze darting between the SUVs and Ibrahim, realization dawning too late. He had crossed the wrong man. The luxury car dealership in Los Angeles stood frozen under the morning light, its glass walls reflecting the city's skyline. But inside, the air was heavy with dread. Ibrahim Traoré stood in the center of the showroom, his deep brown skin glowing softly under the amber lights. His black hoodie and faded jeans, a quiet rebellion against the opulence around him. His scuffed sneakers were steady on the marble floor, his dark eyes calm but unyielding, a faint West African accent threading through his words as he spoke softly to himself. Now we'll see what true luxury looks like. The tension in the room was palpable, the showroom's polished facade crumbling as three matte black SUVs loomed outside, their presence a silent threat. Richard Voss, the manager, stood near his glass-walled office, his tall frame rigid in a tailored navy suit, his slick-back silver hair catching the light, his sharp gaze darting between the SUVs and Ibrahim, his face pale with realization. He had crossed the wrong man. Harvey Lair, the global director of oversight for international business ethics, stepped into the showroom, his steel-gray ponytail pulled tight, his dark suit immaculate, his piercing blue eyes scanning the space with a cold precision. The four individuals in dark suits flanked him, their faces unreadable, leather tablets pressed to their chests like shields. Harvey's gaze locked onto Ibrahim, a nod of recognition passing between them, a silent acknowledgement that sent a chill through the room. Richard's sharp gaze flickered with panic, his polished shoes scuffing the floor as he stepped forward, his voice a shaky whisper. "Mr. Lair, this is a surprise," he said, his tone a mix of fear and forced courtesy. "I wasn't informed of your visit." Harvey didn't even look at him, his eyes fixed on Ibrahim, his voice low and commanding. "Sir," he said, his tone heavy with respect. The showroom fell into a deathly silence, the hum of privilege replaced by the weight of consequence. Ibrahim stepped forward, his black hoodie and faded jeans a stark contrast to the tailored suits around him, his dark eyes steady as he removed his sunglasses, revealing the full depth of his gaze. "Now we talk about respect," he said, his West African accent soft but cutting, each word a thunderclap in the stillness. Richard's face drained of color, his sharp gaze darting between Ibrahim and Harvey, realization crashing over him like a tidal wave. You're, he stammered, his voice breaking, his tailored navy suit suddenly feeling too tight. Ibrahim tilted his head, his dark eyes narrowing. "Ibrahim Traoré," he said simply, his tone calm but heavy with authority, "President of Burkina Faso." Gasps rippled through the room, customers and employees exchanging shocked glances, their whispers rising like a wave. "The president?" a woman in a velvet jacket murmured, her eyes wide. "That's why he didn't back down," a man in a pinstripe suit muttered, his newspaper forgotten. Logan, the salesman who had ordered the cleaning fluid to be sprayed on Ibrahim's sneakers, froze near the counter, his face paling, his hands trembling as he realized the gravity of his actions. Luke, the young employee with light brown skin and curly black hair, dressed in a green staff uniform, stood near the entrance, his light brown eyes shining with awe, his phone still in hand, the video he'd recorded now a ticking time bomb. Ibrahim turned to Harvey, his West African accent steady as he spoke. "Show them." Harvey nodded, pulling out a tablet and tapping the screen. The main showroom monitor, normally reserved for promotional videos of luxury cars, flickered and changed, drawing every eye in the room. A list of internal complaints appeared, each with Richard's name at the top. Client denied access based on appearance. Verbal misconduct. We serve a different class of customer. Systemic rejection of walk-ins of color. Staff instructed to filter clientele visually. Below, dozens of guest complaints, many marked unresolved, painted a damning picture. The crowd gasped, their whispers turning to murmurs of disbelief. Ibrahim stepped forward, his dark eyes locking onto Richard's, his voice a low thunder. "You spoke of standards," he said, his West African accent threading through his words. "But you ignored the most basic one, respect." He swiped the tablet again, and security footage appeared. Clips of Richard and Logan turning away customers based on their appearance, scolding staff for offering hospitality to those deemed unworthy. One clip showed Sophia, the young employee who had brought Ibrahim water, being reprimanded by Richard for diluting the brand after she offered coffee to a woman in a hoodie. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of shock and outrage, as the truth of Voss Automotive Lounge's culture was laid bare. Richard's sharp gaze dropped, his tailored navy suit now a mockery of the power he'd once wielded, his polished shoes scuffing the floor as he stumbled back a step. I didn't mean," he stammered, his voice breaking, but Ibrahim cut him off, his West African accent firm. "You didn't mean to get caught," he said, his dark eyes unyielding, "but you meant every word you said to me, and to countless others." He turned to the crowd, his voice rising slightly, his tone steady but commanding. "This isn't luxury," he said, gesturing to the showroom filled with gleaming luxury cars. "Luxury isn't about wealth or status. It's about how you treat people. And you failed." Harvey stepped forward, his voice cold and final. "Richard Voss, your position is terminated. Effective immediately," he said, his piercing blue eyes cutting through the room. "Your access to all systems is revoked. You will not return to this property." Richard's face contorted, shock turning to desperation, his sharp gaze darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "You can't be serious." "Mwaherne," he shouted, his voice cracking, his tailored navy suit wrinkling as he lunged forward. "I built this showroom. I brought in every major client." Ibrahim's dark eyes narrowed, his West African accent a quiet thunder as he spoke. "And you drove out every decent human being along the way." The crowd held its breath, the tension crackling like static, as a security officer in a navy blazer approached Richard, his presence a silent threat. Richard's shoulders sagged, his sharp gaze dropping to the floor, his tailored navy suit now a symbol of his downfall. The showroom remained silent, the weight of Ibrahim's words hanging heavy in the air, a lesson in social justice that would echo far beyond these walls. But the storm wasn't over. What would Ibrahim do next? And how would the world react to the truth? The luxury car dealership in Los Angeles stood like a hollow shell under the midday sun, its glass walls reflecting the city's skyline. But inside, the air was heavy with the weight of a fallen empire. Ibrahim Traoré stood in the center of the showroom, his deep brown skin glowing softly under the amber lights, his black hoodie and faded jeans, a quiet defiance against the opulence that once defined this space. His scuffed sneakers were steady on the marble floor, his dark eyes calm but unyielding, a faint West African accent threading through his words as he spoke, a quiet thunder that had just toppled a system of prejudice. Richard Voss, the former manager, stood near the glass-walled office, his tailored navy suit now rumpled, his slicked-back silver hair disheveled, his sharp gaze dulled by the crushing blow of his termination. The showroom was silent, the hum of privilege replaced by the echoes of consequence, as customers and employees held their breath, waiting for Ibrahim's next move. Richard's sharp gaze darted around the room, his hands trembling as he adjusted his cufflinks, his voice a broken whisper. "Please, you can't do this," he pleaded, his polished shoes scuffing the floor as he took a shaky step forward, his tailored navy suit a mockery of the power he'd once wielded. Harvey Lair, the global director of oversight, stood nearby, his steel-gray ponytail pulled tight, his dark suit immaculate, his piercing blue eyes cold and unyielding. "It's done, Voss," Harvey said, his voice a final verdict, his tablet pressed to his chest like a gavel. "You're out." The security officer in a navy blazer stepped closer, his presence a silent command, but Richard held up a hand, his chest heaving, his sharp gaze dropping to the floor. "I'll walk," he muttered, his voice barely audible, his shoulders sagging as he turned toward the exit. Ibrahim's dark eyes followed Richard, his West African accent soft but firm as he spoke. "You judged me the moment I walked in, and you tried to humiliate me because I didn't fit your idea of wealth." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, taking in the stunned faces of customers and employees alike. But I wasn't the only one, he continued, his voice steady. And that's the problem. You didn't just fail me. You failed every person who walked through that door and didn't meet your standards. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A woman in a velvet jacket lowering her eyes. A man in a pinstripe suit gripping his newspaper tighter. The weight of Ibrahim's words settling over them like a storm cloud. Ibrahim turned to Sophia, the young employee who had shown him kindness, her light brown skin glowing softly under the lights. Her black hair tied high, her gray blouse and black pants crisp despite the chaos around her. She stood in the corner, her eyes wide with awe, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Come here for a moment," Ibrahim said, his West African accent warm, his dark eyes softening as he beckoned her forward. Sophia hesitated, then stepped toward him, her movements tentative, her breath catching in her throat. Ibrahim reached into his hoodie pocket, pulling out a sleek black key fob, the key to the vintage Ferrari Monza SP2 that had first drawn him to the showroom. "I want you to have this," he said, handing it to her, his voice steady but kind. Sophia's hands trembled as she took the key, her eyes glistening with tears. "Sir, this is $1 million car," she whispered, her voice breaking, her light brown eyes wide with disbelief. Ibrahim smiled gently, his West African accent a quiet reassurance. "It's also a thank you for seeing a person when no one else did," he said, his dark eyes shining with gratitude. The crowd gasped, whispers rippling through the room like a wave. A woman in a velvet jacket murmuring, "She deserves it," while a man in a pinstripe suit nodded, his expression a mix of awe and shame. Sophia clutched the key to her chest, her tears spilling over, her voice a whisper. "Thank you," she said, her light brown eyes meeting Ibrahim's. A quiet bond of kindness movement forming between them. Ibrahim turned back to the crowd, his black hoodie and faded jeans a stark contrast to the tailored suits around him, his dark eyes steady as he spoke, his West African accent resonant. "Some of you came here to show off, some to be seen, others to sell or be sold," he said, his voice rising slightly, his tone commanding. "But none of that means anything if the people in this room don't know how to treat one another." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the showroom filled with gleaming luxury cars, the symbols of a billionaire lifestyle that had once defined this place. "Luxury isn't leather seats or 0 to 60 times," he continued, his voice steady. "It's how people are made to feel when they walk through that door." The room was silent, the weight of Ibrahim's words sinking in, a lesson in social justice that cut through the veneer of privilege. Luke, the young employee who had recorded the confrontation, stepped forward, his light brown skin glowing with pride, his curly black hair catching the light, his green staff uniform a quiet contrast to the opulence around him. I recorded everything," he said, his voice trembling but firm, his light brown eyes shining with resolve. "The world needs to see this." Ibrahim nodded, his West African accent soft but approving. "Do it," he said, his dark eyes steady. "Let them see what happens when kindness is underestimated." Luke tapped his phone, uploading the video to social media, the upload bar ticking like a countdown to chaos. Within moments, the footage began to spread, shared by thousands, then millions. Hashtags like #respect for all and justice for Ibrahim trending globally. The video captured everything: Richard's cruel taunts, the spray of cleaning fluid, Ibrahim's steady response, and the world erupted in outrage. Comments flooded in, relentless and furious. "How can anyone treat Ibrahim Traoré like this?" one user wrote. "He's the president of Burkina Faso, a legend of humility," another added. "That manager thinks he's superior. What a disgrace." Ibrahim turned toward the exit, his black hoodie and faded jeans a quiet testament to his humility, his scuffed sneakers echoing softly on the marble floor as he walked away. The showroom remained silent, the lesson he'd imparted hanging heavy in the air. A lesson in respect, in dignity, in the true meaning of luxury. But as he stepped outside, the golden sun casting long shadows over Los Angeles, the world was already reacting, the storm he'd ignited spreading far beyond these walls. A heartwarming story of justice and kindness that would change everything. The streets of Los Angeles shimmered under the golden sun, the city's pulse a steady hum of life. But for Richard Voss, the former manager of Voss Automotive Lounge, the world had turned cold and silent. He stood outside a small community center on the outskirts of the city, his tailored navy suit replaced by a plain gray shirt and jeans, his slick-back silver hair now disheveled, his sharp gaze softened by weeks of unrelenting scrutiny. The viral video capturing his cruel taunts, the spray of cleaning fluid on a man's sneakers, and the quiet dignity of that man in a black hoodie had cost him everything: his job, his reputation, his pride. The dealership had become a pariah, its marble floors now empty, its once loyal customers vanished in the wake of a global boycott. Richard had tried to fight back, claiming he'd been misunderstood, but the world's judgment was unyielding. The hashtag #Chasha Justice for Ibrahim, a constant reminder of his fall. Yet as he stepped into the community center, his hands trembling as he carried a box of donated books, a flicker of change stirred within him, his sharp gaze now clouded with regret. Inside the center, Richard volunteered quietly, his polished shoes long gone, replaced by worn sneakers that echoed softly on the wooden floor. He'd lost everything: his career, his status, his pride, but the weeks of silence had forced him to look inward, to confront the arrogance that had defined him for so long. "I thought I was better than everyone," he admitted to a coworker one day, his voice low, his sharp gaze dropping to the floor. "But I was wrong, terribly wrong." The coworker, a young woman with warm brown eyes and a gentle smile, nodded softly, her voice kind. "It's never too late to change," she said, handing him a stack of books to shelve. Richard took them, his hand steady now, his sharp gaze softening as he began to rebuild. Not his career, but his understanding of what it meant to truly respect others. The dealership, meanwhile, underwent a painful restructuring, its reputation shattered, a cautionary tale etched into the annals of the luxury industry. Halfway across the world in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré stood before a crowd under the blazing sun, his deep brown skin glowing in the golden light, his black hoodie and faded jeans replaced by a simple white tunic, a nod to his people's traditions. His dark eyes were steady, his West African accent resonant as he spoke, his scuffed sneakers a quiet reminder of the journey that had brought him here. The vintage car he'd purchased from a modest dealership in Los Angeles, a car he'd restored with care, stood beside him, its polished lines gleaming, a symbol of something far greater than luxury. "This car was just an object," Ibrahim said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "But now it carries a lesson. Respect is the true luxury, and it can change the world." And the crowd erupted in cheers, their voices a thunderous wave as Ibrahim announced the auction. The proceeds set to fund education for Burkina Faso's youth, a cause close to his heart. The auction was a global event, broadcast live from Ouagadougou, drawing millions of viewers who'd followed Ibrahim's story through the viral video. Bidders from around the world drove the price higher, the car's value soaring not for its rarity, but for the message it carried, a message of social justice and equality that resonated far beyond the borders of Burkina Faso. By the end of the night, the auction had raised millions of dollars, the funds pouring into programs for Burkina Faso's youth, building schools, providing scholarships, and empowering a new generation. Ibrahim stood on the stage, his dark eyes shining with quiet pride, his West African accent soft as he spoke. "Respect doesn't depend on who you are, what you have, or where you're from," he said, his voice steady. "It's a basic right, something we all deserve." The crowd roared, their applause a testament to the movement Ibrahim had sparked, a kindness movement that had transcended borders and touched hearts around the globe. Back in Los Angeles, the legacy of Ibrahim's lesson continued to spread. The hashtag Nosh Respect is Luxury trending for weeks, people sharing stories of prejudice, resilience, and change. The small dealership where Ibrahim had bought the car became a beacon of hope, its faded sign now a symbol of equality. Customers flocking to buy from a man who treated everyone with dignity, regardless of their appearance. Luke, the young employee who'd recorded the video, left Voss Automotive Lounge to work at the small dealership, his light brown skin glowing with pride as he shared his story with the press, his curly black hair catching the light, his green staff uniform a quiet contrast to the opulence he'd left behind. "I knew I had to do something," he said, his light brown eyes shining. Ibrahim Traoré showed us what true leadership looks like, Haranam. In Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré stood by a window in the presidential palace, the red earth of Ouagadougou stretching before him, the golden sun casting long shadows over the city. His deep brown skin glowed softly, his dark eyes thoughtful as he reflected on the journey, from a luxury dealership in Los Angeles to a global movement for respect and equality. His black hoodie and faded jeans were back, a quiet nod to the man who'd walked among his people. His scuffed sneakers a reminder of the lesson he'd shared. He'd come to Los Angeles seeking a car for charity, but what he'd found was a platform to show the world that heartwarming stories of kindness and dignity could change everything. Respect doesn't cost a thing, he'd said, and the world had listened, proving that even the smallest act of dignity could spark a revolution of the heart, a revolution that echoed from the streets of Los Angeles to the red earth of Burkina Faso, a testament to the power of Southern culture and the universal language of respect.